Imagine a princess made of living crystal that no warrior in the galaxy could lift. Every champion tried. Every champion failed, her fate frozen forever under two silent moons, until a simple human mechanic stepped forward with nothing but courage and one strong arm. The moment he touched her, the impossible began to break, and destiny started to move. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us where are you watching from. Now let's jump into the story. Under the twin moons, the opal halls of Orithia glowed like a sea at night. Silvery lamps cast soft rings of light across the crystal floors, while banners of woven glass hung silent in the high air. People from many worlds had come for a sacred tradition, and yet the hall felt like a held breath. They had tried all morning and part of the afternoon. Warriors in leaf armor, guardians in scaled plate, pilots with iron rings on their fingers. None of them had lifted the princess. None of them had even moved her more than a breath. Princess Myra rested on a shallow pedestal of clear stone. Her metamorphosis had rendered her a living prism, all soft edges and gentle light, like dawn trapped in crystal. The rule was simple on paper and impossible in practice. Lift her without harm, and the princess would awaken fully. Fail, and the chance passed. Jace Torres was not supposed to be anywhere near the ceremony. He was a human mechanic stationed in the underways where the palace groaned and hummed with pipes, cables, and quiet worry. Earth was a long way behind him, and the days in Orithia's cool corridors often felt too big for one person. Overseer Drail's voice crackled in his ear as he slid along a service rail. Coolant flow shows spikes. Junction Lie 3, 5 minutes. On it, Jace said, wiping a line of metal dust from his cheek. He found the panel at the edge of the great hall, just behind sculpted columns. His screen showed bad numbers. His hand felt heat at the seam, and his gut said the board would pop if the load stayed high. He cracked the panel, swapped a coupler, and soldered a bridge that made the readings drift from angry red to steady green. As he closed the housing, sparks leapt from a neighboring unit with a dry snap, the kind that hushes any room. People turned. Sovereign Kaller raised a hand but did not shout. Jace, who had been invisible all month, stepped into view because the broken thing was calling his name the way broken things do. Permission to stabilize the secondary? Jace asked the nearest guard. The guard blinked at the human voice, then moved aside. Quickly, someone said. Do not disturb the right, Jace knelt. The panel was older, patched many times, and the local loop was misreading ambient fields from the pedestal. He eased the board out, rerouted a ground, and palmed the housing back. The chill of the hall softened to a clean, even cool. A gentle sound rose from the vents like a sigh of relief. A wrench slipped from his belt and clattered too close to the pedestal. He reached for it, stumbled, and steadied himself with one hand against the base of the clear stone. His palm met the edge of the crystal and light gathered where skin touched prism. The hall breathed in. The glow traced his hand like ink in water. Jace pulled back, heart racing, but the light followed, soft and curious. Human, the Sovereign said, voice even. What is your name? Jace Torres, he said. I fix things. The right answers him, murmured an elder. Overseer Drail's whisper pressed through the earpiece. Stand still. Readings spiked when you touched the pedestal. Guards formed a lane, and the Sovereign's gaze held Jace steady. The princess chooses with more than tradition, he said. She senses measure and intent. A murmur moved through the crowd like wind through reeds. No champion stepped forward now. They watched the mechanic who had only come to make the air run cold. Jace looked at the princess's still face within the crystal. He did not see a prize or a riddle. He saw a person who might be lonely inside a beautiful silence. Without bravado, he placed both hands along the prism's edge. Light bloomed again, brighter, warmer, like morning over frost. He felt the weight change, not in his arms but in his head, an easing, a welcome. He slid one arm under her shoulders and one under her knees, the way he had carried a friend with a sprained ankle back on Earth. His left arm carried most of the balance, and to his shock, the weight arranged itself like a promise. He lifted. The hall fell quiet enough to hear his breath. The prism brightened to white, then softened into dust fine as snow. It drifted upward in a swirl, and a young woman with iridescent skin and luminous eyes stood in his arms, very real and very alive. Her lips parted. You felt me, she said softly. Not the test. Me. Hi, Jace said, because there was too much to say and hello was the only true thing he had. The Sovereign's voice rang clear. The right holds. The princess has awakened. Now the trials begin. And with that, the first ripple of doubt and hope spread through Orathea like a new current in an old sea. The arena rose from the palace heart like a blooming shell. Tears filled with citizens, scholars, and visitors who had crossed long distances to witness a story that felt both ancient and new. Banners were muted, voices softer than usual. Everyone wanted to see if the humans' quiet hands were luck or something more. Princess Myra watched from a shaded balcony beside Sovereign Kalar. Her gaze found Jace, and he felt steadier for it. Overseer Drayle stood with a trio of engineers, arms folded, eyes full of numbers. Platforms slid back, and a tower emerged from the arena floor. The lattice engine, a relic of Orathea's first builders. It was beautiful and tired, joints of star metal, veins of translucent conduits, nodules like sleeping seeds. The challenge appeared simple: restore. Function before the high sun crossed a marked line. But centuries of failure said it was anything but simple. Jace circled the tower the way a careful listener walks around a story. Not to judge, but to hear where the pauses live. He placed his ear to a quiet panel and heard nothing. He tapped a conduit and felt the faintest tick, like a heartbeat trapped in a wall. His fingers followed the old power traces until they ran into dead ends where the palace's modern systems began. It doesn't speak the same language, he murmured. He unclipped his diagnostic band and slipped off its casing. Inside were the bones of a translator for signals he knew. He could make it less perfect and more useful. He pulled a slim battery from his handlight, a coupler from his repair kit, and a piece of braided wire from his own belt. He worked slowly at first, then faster. Encouraged by small truths, a steady hum here, a soft light there, rise in the old metal's temperature, as if it remembered being awake. The crowd shifted when he slid under the tower, lying on his back to see a clutch of sockets cut at odd angles. He laughed quietly. "You'd do that, wouldn't you?" he told the engine as if it had personality. He soldered a bridge between the translator and the main port, then clipped two dangling leads to the palace grid with a portable breaker in between. If the load spiked, he could kill it in a blink. Ready? He asked no one in particular. He flicked the breaker for a long breath. Nothing. Then a trembling shimmer passed up the engine's spine. Lights chased one another along the conduits in hesitant lines, like someone learning to write again. Loops that had been dark filled with color, then settled into a calm glow. Sound grew, not loud, more like the quiet music of a well-tuned room. On the balcony, scholars leaned forward. Overseer Drayle whispered. He didn't force it. He introduced the new to the old and let them meet halfway. Above the tower, a thin beam of light unfolded into a sheet, and the sheet into a web that brushed the arena dome, before aligning with points across the city. The lattice engine was not a machine for power alone. It was a memory anchor, a way for the city to remember how its parts talked when it was younger. For a breathless moment, the lights of Orathea changed pattern, forming a map older citizens had only seen in archived sketches. The city as it once was, now speaking with the city it had become. The beam softened and drew back into the tower. The engine stayed alive, not wild now, but steady, as if it had taken a full drink of water and was content. Jace cut the breaker, watched his translator catch the last handshake, and re-engaged cleanly. He wiped oil from his forearm and stood. The Sovereign rose. "The first trial is complete," he said. "We learn our lesson with it, to honor the past without becoming trapped there, to welcome the present without arrogance." Princess Myra's hands clasped in quiet delight. The crowd, so careful before, let go and cheered. Not for spectacle, but for relief, like a city loosening stiff shoulders. Jace looked small beneath the tower, and perhaps that was why the moment felt large. Not a hero with a blade, but a person who listens to machines until they tell the truth. When the arena emptied, Myra met Jace in a shaded corridor. "The engine thanked you," she said. "Felt like it," he answered, a little shy. "It just needed someone to introduce it to the new neighbors. You made a bridge where others tried to make a wall," she said. Orathea noticed. Jace nodded. thinking of the underways, the quiet pipes, and the long road from Earth. Somewhere inside, a knot loosened. Maybe he could do this a second time. The next day brought a circle instead of a tower. 7 emissaries stood at equal distances, with small lights on the floor marking shared ground. Each emissary carried a different history. The Vesh in living glass armor who valued memory. The Naroon whose voices sounded like soft weather and prized free movement. The Core Hive whose chittering speech hid a patient intelligence and a love of variation, and others with needs and worries layered by years. The Sovereign's voice carried. Orathea has traded and argued with each of you. Our tables have held more pride than bread. The second trial is to shape an accord that eases strain and grows benefit for all. Jace did not have the words of a seasoned diplomat. He had the habits of a mechanic who understood that a loud clank often came from a small part out of place. He greeted each emissary by name, which he practiced carefully before the trial. He asked each to explain not what they wanted from Orathea, but what they needed most to flourish. The hall grew still as one by one they named their roots. The Vesh needed safe vaults for shared memory. The Naruan needed open lanes without hidden tolls. The Core Hive needed transport and samples to keep their libraries of life rich and resilient. The Tideborn Morosi asked for clean boundaries and fair rescue rights in storm seasons. The Loomers sought safeguards for cultural works that dimmed if copied carelessly. The Zeth carried old fear of being ignored. The tall Lyran named respect without ceremony. Jace sketched on the floor with a light stylus, drawing circles for needs, lines for gifts, and dots where exchange could happen fairly. He spoke slowly, checking meaning as he went. If the Vesh keep for us the stories we are bad at holding, Orathea can lend lattice space with controlled access, he said. If the Naroon teach the shortest paths through difficult currents, Orathea can commit to marked open channels with shared guardianship instead of fees that choke the lanes. An emissary of the core clicked a thoughtful rhythm, and in seasons when the Morosai storms are worst, we can share shelter domes in exchange for grants to study the deep blooms. The Loomers pulsed softly. We will host exchanges if our consent is part of the rhythm, and if we can dim what should not spread. Arguments flared and cooled. Jace let the heat pass, then asked the question that had helped the first trial. What could you give that would cost you little but help another greatly? The room shifted. Generosity, seen clearly, is sometimes easier than compromise. Solutions appeared like stepping stones after rain. As sun lowered, the sketch on the floor looked less like a map of trouble, and more like a net that could carry weight without breaking. Jace read the main points aloud. There were no flourishes. Only clear language and simple checks. Missteps would trigger repairs instead of punishment. Each season would include a quiet review. No single party's gain would rise while another's fell unnoticed. The Sovereign asked each emissary in turn. Consent came in words, in light, in scent, and in coded clicks. The hall breathed again. Princess Myra stood. The second trial shows us a way we have avoided. Listening is slow, but it builds things that last, she said. We are used to bright answers. Perhaps the right answers are sometimes gentle. After the formal close, the Naruan emissary approached Jace. Humans argue among themselves often, they said, voice like rain. Today you stitched many voices together. Machines taught me, Jace said. You can't bully a system into harmony. You line things up, you ease friction, you let them agree to work. In the quiet that followed, Orathea felt like a place where new air had arrived. Not dramatic, but fresh. Morning light fell through the arena dome in soft bands. The third platform rose with no gears or engines, only a pedestal, holding a small crystal shaped like a teardrop. The Sovereign's face was kind and unreadable. The third trial is choice, he said. This crystal opens a path to the place you call home. If you use it, your bond here ends with honor and without blame. If you refuse it, your bond here begins with weight and with welcome. The hall made no sound at all. Earth unfurled inside Jace's mind. Rains on a city street. Small music in a cafe at night. The easy way people say your name when they have always known it. The pedestal held a way to all of that. It also held an end to a complicated promise he had not asked for. And now, strangely, did not want to escape. He looked up at Princess Myra. She did not smile or plead. She met his eyes with trust and a quiet grief at whatever he would choose. Beyond her, The city waited with both caution and hope. Orathea was not perfect, but Jace had begun to love it the way a mechanic loves a stubborn engine, not for how it shines, but for how it tries. He lifted the crystal. It was warm, as if it remembered hands. Light stirred inside, the way sunrise stirs under a cloud. "I won't run from the work," Jace said softly, more to himself than to anyone else. He set the crystal on the floor. His heel came down firm and certain. It broke with a bright sound that didn't hurt. For a heartbeat, nothing changed. Then the city answered. Lights along the avenues shifted in waves, spelling an old phrase from the first age of Orathea, a phrase most citizens had only seen in museums. It meant roughly, make a path where there was none. The lattice engine in the palace steadied its tone and sent a quiet pulse. The amphitheater's ceiling arranged its facets and a new pattern formed. Not the line of rulership that had always been, but a braid. 3 strands, tradition, service, and change, wove above Jace and Myra like a crown made of light. The sovereign stepped down from the balcony without ceremony. He placed a simple mantle across Jace's shoulders, not heavy, more like a hand resting there. "We welcome you as consort, and as keeper of the small fixes that prevent great breaks," he said. "Our law has expected certainty for a very long time. Today it learns to expect care." The crowd's cheer was less thunder and more rain on dry ground. Soft, steady, everywhere at once. Overseer Drael appeared at Jace's side with a half-smile that might have been there all along. "I assume this means I cannot schedule you for the midnight filter audit." "I'll still show up," Jace said. "Filters don't fix themselves." Princess Myra reached for his hands. Her voice was quiet enough that only he could hear. "You could have gone. I would have respected that." "I know," he said. "Maybe that's why staying feels like the right repair." She laughed, the sound like water over glass, and led him to the balcony rail. The city below had already begun its first small change. The lights of a narrow district, long dim and often ignored, brightened as crews there received new power paths approved that very hour by the council, using a rule they had just rewritten. The braid in the ceiling softened and settled into the palace's permanent light script, a living reminder that the city could adjust itself without breaking. That evening, as the twin moons rose, Jace walked the underways with Myra. They paused where steam curled from a vent, and he showed her how to listen for the soft hiss that meant a seal would fail soon. She showed him a panel that sang when someone touched it with kindness. They talked about the first repairs they would make together. Clear laws for shared lanes. New apprenticeships that paired engineers with storytellers. A tradition day where anyone could propose a better way and see it tested gently. Not punished if it cracked on the first try. In time, people would call the day of the third trial a turning. Jace never called it that. He called it a choice made with both hands. One to let go of a door, and one to hold on to a promise. He and Princess Myra would make mistakes, and then they would repair them. That was the point. When the night had fully settled, the palace lamp shaped a pattern across the sky once more. Not the old map, not the new braid, but something that looked like 2 people lifting the same weight together and finding that it felt light. "We'll take it one repair at a time," Jace said. "One kindness at a time," Myra added. And Orathea, which had watched so many bright endings, leaned toward this quieter beginning and chose to keep listening.